Um, to the first essential conversations. I'm Dena Merriam here with Lama Palden, a dear, dear friend. And we decided to start these conversations because with so much going on in the world right now, and with so many conversations about why it's happening, we felt it was important to look at the deeper causes, the karmic causes of events that are unfolding right now, both in the US and around the world. Most people are talking about, what are the superficial causes in terms of the election and timings and why people got voted in and all that and what's going, the more superficial causes of the changes that are taking place. But that's not enough. Unless we look at the deeper causes, we won't understand how we got here, and we won't really know how to move forward. So let's start our discussion, Lama Palden, about why we're doing this conversation.
Sounds good, Mary. Sounds good, Dina. Glad to be here. So, from a Buddhist point of view, it's really important for each of us to understand that we're interconnected with all beings and that wanting the good for ourselves or just a few loved ones or our tribe or the people we identify with really isn't enough. We have to really want and work toward the better good, the greater good for all sentient beings. And that's the way we can all benefit. And that's the way that produces a kind of harmonious unfolding of events for all of us. And so from a Buddhist point of view, we would really look at beyond, the election and the fact that there's been a swing right in America and other parts of the world. Underneath that is a lot of fear and insecurity that's manifesting as wanting to be part of a powerful movement, wanting to have a big daddy who's going to be in charge and tell us what to do and feel strong in yourself through being part of this big movement. And then on top of this big movement, the people that are really in control are operating out of greed, delusion, and power grabbing, and also out of hatred for certain kinds of people. So instead of seeing people as inherently equal and wanting justice and equality for everyone, they're only wanting that for certain people.
So there are 2 points that I want to expand on that you raised. I listen a lot to the political historian Heather Cox Richardson, and one of my reasons for wanting to do this series of discussions is because I always feel like saying, but what is the karmic cause? Because she talks a lot about the history of the US. And the what we have right now is not out of nowhere. It didn't come out of nowhere.
Mhm.
There's a long history since the beginning, because the consciousness was different then, uh, uh, of not knowing about interconnection, not realizing that the well-being of the other impacts your own well-being. And so that consciousness was not there. And so from the beginning, there was a sense of being ruled by a powerful group, an
Mhm.
exclusive group. And throughout the history of the US, that has continued. Slowly, that group has maybe widened. First, it was just landowners, white men, and then it expanded, and until now, everybody's supposed to have a voice, but in actuality, everybody doesn't have a voice. So it's the same mindset of and I think the whole slogan of America First is sort of like the epitome of of a lack of interconnection, a lack of understanding of interconnection, because
Mhm.
it's basically saying I only care about me, which is like the polar opposite of reality, which
Mhm.
is you can't do well if everybody doesn't do well.
And we know now with trade and the stock market and all the economic realities, the climate realities, we are all interconnected. We're all do better when the trade policies and the economic policies benefit people around the world, not just in our own country. We don't stand alone. And And then when it comes to climate change, there's no way we can solve this through one country. So the situation is begging for us to really understand this interconnectedness and working together in a way that's very startlingly clear.
All of nature operates on that principle, and perhaps nothing will change until there is a sort of a deeper global understanding of all of the ways that we are interconnected. It's not just the economics and it's the trade and environment. It's energetically. We're part of one single conscious world.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, I think that there is, much more talk about interconnection, but we don't behave in an interconnected way as a collective.
Yeah, and I think even people that don't necessarily understand it, there's a lot of very good-hearted people who are out there in the world working for the common good or wishing well for, their neighbors across the world or that kind of thing. So I think the other really important part of this is loving kindness and compassion from a spiritual point of view. That in all spiritual traditions, it's not said you should only have loving kindness and compassion for the people in your own tradition, but that you should have it for others as well. And I think this is the other foundational point is many people do have a sense of loving kindness and compassion for people all around the world and people all throughout each of our own countries. But in for a great deal of other people, that's lacking.
I think that this lack of sort of living an interconnected life has
Hmm.
led to greed. Just to
Hmm.
get as much as I can for myself. And I think we're almost at the pinnacle now, where greed is out in the open, whereas before maybe it wasn't so much in everybody's face, but now because of the media, social media, everything is reported instantly, and we know, what the net worth of different people are, how much they spend on a wedding, how much they spend on a plane, while people don't have enough to eat. So I've thought a lot about how you counter this greed because it's almost, I was reading an article the other day, and I have long felt this. We have a poverty line. There should also be a greed line because we know that we've developed a poverty line some decades ago because it was acknowledged that we shouldn't allow people to fall below that where they can survive, that basic minimum, because it hurts the community, it hurts society when you have people who can't eat. But it's the same thing. It hurts society when you have people who have above a certain amount where they can't possibly use that amount of wealth in a lifetime, and so it gets used for political power, as we see today, to buy political power. And so as I reflect on how we counter greed in our society, well, the opposite of greed is generosity.
Hmm.
And it's like what you said with loving kindness. The more we can more in our own life practice generosity, because there is a balance. There's the negative karma that a nation accumulates, a collective accumulates, and there's the
Hmm.
positive karma that a collective accumulates. When the negative karma gets too intense, something happens. And so we have to always be working to balance that, right?
Yes. Yeah, and America is a good example. We have made some good karma for our own people and for around the world by helping people and establishing good programs. But we've also created a lot of very difficult and challenging karma, through policies based on greed and power grabbing, both in our own country and abroad. So, how do you think the individual can um, counter this movement toward greed and power grabbing in our own lives?
I think enormous wealth has become an aspiration in our society globally. That's what people want. They want to be rich, right? It's they're not saying I want to be of good character. I want to be of a noble personality. The aspiration of society is having as much wealth as possible. It's like the golden calf, right? So how do we shift the aspiration of our society to the qualities that create truly noble characters? You know, the all the qualities, the virtues. In other words, how do we bring the virtues to be really honored? Because if you look
Mhm.
around the world at world leaders, I mean, who would who are the virtuous ones? The ones who really are not acting out of self-interest.
Mhm. Mhm.
They're
And
not many.
yeah, yes, but the ones that have acted in a way that was for the greater interest are revered, like all over the world, like Gandhi, like Dalai Lama,
Yeah.
other people like that. They're greatly revered when people are great leaders that really think of the benefit of everybody. And, my mom said, who was a news reporter, said something way back to me in the 90s, in the early 90s, because she saw the whole movement in this way toward power and greed. And she said, what do people think that when they're really wealthy, they're going to live in barricaded compounds and have to take armored cars and their kids to school, in armored cars and have armored schools, and everything's going to be like have to be heavy security, because if the rich get richer and richer and richer and the poor get poorer and poorer and poorer, which is the direction we're going right now in America, then it causes great unrest, and the whole community is turned into suffering. It's out of balance, and the disenfranchised will rise up and create trouble. And it's just not good for everybody. Like, how do you really enjoy your life if your um, neighbor is really suffering?
I can't imagine, and I also think the quality of greed, it's a grasping, it's almost a substitute for love when you
Yeah,
don't,
substitute for love, and it's a substitute for self-esteem
yeah, yeah.
and self-confidence in a natural, healthy way of having good, healthy self-esteem and healthy self-confidence.
So it may be if we just look at the US, because the US does impact a lot of the rest of the world and does set up certain sort of ideals to follow, or at least has in the past. If you look at the US, this concept of accumulating power and greed is not new. It's just almost reached a pinnacle now.
Right, it's
Um,
not new. Yeah, it's
not new.
yeah,
And so there needs to be, it's not as if suddenly we wake up one day and it's here. I mean, there have been periods throughout history
right.
where it's been more or less, it's gotten to be more concentrated in the hands of a few, and then certain policies were set, and then those weaken, and again, a concentration of wealth. There seems to be a rhythm to it, but it seems that we've reached a point now, especially since we're also at the same time dealing with uh, Earth's resources, limit to resources. It's everybody can't live. I listen a lot to Ezra Klein too, and he's got this book Abundance, and I've listened to his talks, and I always feel like asking him, but what about, everybody can't be a millionaire or live like a millionaire because there's simply not enough resources on this planet for 8 billion people to live like that. So abundance is not really just about material wealth. I mean, there's inner abundance. There's an abundance
Right.
of virtue, abundance of love. There are many ways to look at abundance. And I think the transition that we are at as a society, if we're going to move into a more wholesome phase, is to really look at our values.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and as you said earlier, the idea of noble character as and good values has gone out of style, so to speak, in the States in a great among many people.
So it's also interesting when you look at the political situation in the U.S. now of a movement toward authoritarianism. I can't help but wonder, and I've wondered about this for 20 years. We invaded Iraq, about 1 million people died. There was never a coming to terms with our action. What,
Hmm.
were we, what was the rationale for doing that?
Hmm.
Did we take responsibility? Um, Same thing with the financial crisis, which caused a lot of suffering to people, and there's been no accountability. And these have karmic consequences.
Hmm. Hmm.
So when you talk about America's karma, it's not just going back to what happened to the indigenous or the slavery. I mean, it's more recent things that continue to sort of build up, and then all the interventions we've done in Central America, supporting dictators. These, it's almost as if what we've done to other countries, we're now doing to ourselves,
Hmm.
or
Yeah,
what
it's
we've
really,
allowed other countries, what we've supported in other countries. We took out in Iran a democratically elected president and put in a dictator.
hmm. Hmm.
So these have karmic consequences that maybe we're now paying off those debts.
Yeah, and I agree that there, nations do need to, and in certain nations around the world, there's certain things that have been, nations have tried to make repairing and amends for. I mean, for example, the Germans have given people outside, Jews that fled from Germany, they've given them citizenship and passports. And, I mean, it's a small thing compared to what happened, but certain nations on certain issues have tried to make amends. But I think I agree with you that standing up and taking responsibility for the destructive actions that we've done and also renouncing those and wanting to move ahead with taking positive actions for our own, all of our own people, as well as other countries throughout the world, is the way to repair that karma. And at this point, we're going in the opposite direction. We're creating a lot more negative karma. We're creating a lot more suffering for people in our own country and abroad. And I think the consequences of that in the future are not going to be good, unless we can curtail and turn this around and get our country back on course.
I think you mentioned Germany. I think Germany actually did a lot to sort of try to repair the damage.
Hmm.
Uh, and they are the firmest against allowing, being very vigilant not to allow those kind of forces to emerge again. And they've been
Hmm.
very vocal about that.
Hmm.
And so I think that there was a profound lesson learned
Hmm.
by the Germans. Um, I mean, the whole karmic situation, the whole karmic process is very complex. It's not just one thing, it's
Of
extremely
course.
complex.
Yeah, it's very complex. Karma is accumulated through millions of years for each moment that we experience right now. There's karma from, countless lifetimes, countless millennia that feeds into what's happening right now. But in each moment, regardless of whatever karma is arising, each of us as human beings has the freedom to choose how we're going to meet the situation. As the karma's unfolding, it is what it is, or as events are unfolding, they are what they are. But each of us has this freedom to respond to whatever is happening, in whatever way we choose. And I think it's a time, I feel like, for people who do care about loving kindness and compassion and equity and justice and freedom for all, that it's a time when it's really good for all of us to put our values into action. And I agree with too, like what you said, that it's a time to really, as a nation, reassess our values and what direction we're going. But that's going to take a huge amount of bridging between different factions in our country to actually have a national conversation about what are values. I mean, it'd be great if some of the great thinkers and writers of our times, start bringing these up publicly, like, let's discuss what our values as a nation are. That would be, I think, a really valuable discussion for the public, like you raised.
Like one of the qualities that America will learn is humility,
Mm-hmm.
which
Mm-hmm.
has not been a quality that we're known for.
Right.
And that, to be one among equals, really, one nation among equals. We're not the only nation that needs to learn that, for sure. But if we don't, if you don't learn important qualities willingly, consciously, then they're imposed on you. Situations are imposed so that you will learn that. I know that I've been a student of karma in one's personal life, in my own life. And if there's a certain lesson you have to learn and you don't embrace that, the situations will keep coming back to you to help you learn that lesson. So it's like you
Absolutely.
learn it the first time, the second time, or the third time, or you learn it the 10th time, right?
Yes, and we're slow learners as human beings. We're slow learners. I've noticed that with my own karmic situation too, that I'm a slow learner, and that gives me a lot of patience for our whole human situation. But, you know, um, that there is there is an effect to our actions.
There's an effect to our actions and our words, and everything that is thought is energy, words are energy. Everything that's put out there has some return. What
Hmm.
what you sow, you reap. I mean, it's
Yes,
in
as
all
you
the
so.
traditions. As you
Yes,
sow, you reap. It's in all the traditions. It's
right.
the law of cause and effect. And so, as we see, I mean, this is really, I think, a teaching a lot of spiritual practitioners are struggling with this right now. I think of how we react to situations that seem so adverse to spiritual principles, to certain,
Hmm.
actions and statements being made in our name that are the opposite of what's going to lead to a good result.
Hmm. Yeah, and I
And
think it's a time where spiritual people need to really stay grounded in our fundamental values and what we fundamentally care about, and really um, embody those principles of humility and generosity and loving kindness and compassion, but also strength and the willingness to stand up to injustice, and keeping our lights really strong during these difficult times. I think we have to find peace through our spiritual practice every day to be able to be at peace and have our actions in terms of standing up against things that we don't agree with or against injustice. We want our actions to come from a place of peace, wisdom, and loving kindness and compassion. And then our actions will be as skillful as possible, and we will be in alignment with our goals through our actions.
as I've seen the spiritual movement grow in the US from when we were younger over the past few decades, there's definitely much more of a consciousness collective in this country now than there was when I was younger, when we were younger. Um, and and as we stay focused on that, that will have an impact. It will affect change at some point.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I
Yeah.
think it's important to remember all of the good efforts that are taking place. It's very easy because they don't get any visibility. It's very easy to get lost in all the harm that's being done
Hmm.
and not to see all the generous work that's happening at the same time.
Yeah, I always like to think of all the good people out there across the world who every day get up and just try to be the best person they can and work hard for their own family, but work hard in a way that benefits others. And there's so many good-hearted people in the world. And I think in terms of that, we need to really always keep acknowledging that, like we're talking about, because that helps us not to lose heart.
And not to get caught up in reaction, not to be
Yeah,
so reactive. It's
to
very,
respond rather than react, to
yeah.
respond out
So
of our wisdom and compassion.
it's very easy to respond emotionally. Uh,
Yeah.
uh,
Buddhists have this term called upaya in Sanskrit, or in English called skillful means, which is means how can our actions be as skillful as possible to bring about the best result. And to have skillful means, it has to arise out of this sense of greater understanding of the interconnectedness and the kindness and the finding deeper peace through our spiritual life, and through embodying our own integrity. Integrity is another word which we're seeing the lack of very strongly in our government at this time here in the States. And integrity is another one of those core spiritual principles that is so important for us to embody and to come from in terms of our activity.
it's- I think what I have learned in the last few months is to take the long view. In other
Mm.
words, to know that what's happening now and tomorrow and the next day is not going to go on forever, and that if you look way into the future, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, the world's going to be in a different place. And I think in a much more integrated, harmonious, interconnected place where instead of America first, it's all beings first, not just humans, all beings, really caring equally for life, for all forms of life. I mean, that's where we're heading. And I think we have to see the current situation as sort of bumps in the road.
Well, and I think we have to very much pray for what you're saying to be the case and to come about. And I think we have to stand up and work for that each in our own way, whatever we can do. It's not just going to happen through nothing. I think it requires, just like the Second World War required a huge amount of people standing up and doing whatever they could. I think this situation now requires standing up and doing what we can and really praying for the whole to move forward in a positive way that benefits
which
everyone.
which is the purpose for the essential conversations, so that we can speak about this, and inviting others to join our conversation, and hopefully really build, or at least highlight the community that is in many, many ways working toward this vision.
Absolutely. Yes.
Because I think that it's important for us to not get caught up in what's being perpetrated, but just to continue moving forward
And
in
to
as
build
whatever way we
community.
can. Yeah,
Yeah, to build community like you're saying.
yeah,
Yeah,
to build community.
absolutely.
And for some people, it will mean speaking, for some writing letters or making calls or marching. There are many, many
Going,
ways.
going to demonstrations, hopefully we'll all be doing that.
Well, this is the end of our first essential conversations, and we'll have the next one in June, when we're going to begin to invite other spiritual teachers and practitioners to join us on these essential conversations with a focus on spirituality and politics. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Dena.